Quick note before we start. The film we're discussing today, Own Worst Enemy, is now included with Amazon Prime. So if you're a subscriber, you can watch it there for free. Hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to Below the Line, where we talk about making movies from the crew perspective. My name is Skid. I was an assistant director in Hollywood for the better part of 8 years, and now I'm not. Today, we're talking about Own Worst Enemy, a 2012 low-budget indie comedy directed by the husband and wife team of Michael and Jessica Judd. Those of you who may be interested in seeing Own Worst Enemy, either before or after you listen to the podcast, it's available online. Go to ownworstenemy.net and see which distribution path works best for you. That's ownworstenemy, one word, .net. I didn't work on this project, but my guests today did. First, we've got the directors, Mike and Jessica Judd. Mike, Jesse, welcome to Below the Line.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Hey, Skid.
Hey, guys. Mike, let's start with you. You've been on the show before, and you're currently an assistant director on Young Sheldon. So what were you doing back in 2012 when Own Worst Enemy was coming together?
In 2012, I was the second AD on Desperate Housewives, and we had a 2-month hiatus coming up before starting the 8th season of that, and I was going to be bumping up to first AD. So I had a 2-month window approaching, and Jess and I talked it out and decided this is the perfect time to make a movie.
Oh, that's interesting, Mike, and we're going to revisit that. But Jesse, for you first, the same questions. What are you doing now, and what were you doing during the production of Own Worst Enemy?
Okay, well, now I started my own publishing company called Wicked Tree Press, and so I'm a writer. So I'm writing comic books, novellas, and novels. I'm also still screenwriting, which is what I was doing back in 2012, as well as working in nonprofit with young people. And I could take the time off work. So he had a hiatus, and it was one of those perfect moments to do something like that. So,
oh, thanks, Jesse.
Mm-hmm.
And in our fourth chair today is Jennifer Kelsey, the lead actress of Own Worst Enemy. Jen, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Jen, tell us a little about where Own Worst Enemy fits into your career.
Well, when I met Mike, I was a PA and I was doing extra work and just really doing the Los Angeles hustle. And then we had a mutual friend who was a PA also, and he facilitated an introduction between us, knowing my career goals to be an actress and knowing Mike's upcoming passion project. He thought we might be a good fit. I had done and did after other small projects as an actor, like many good experiences. I just never really took off. So currently, I might be in a bit of a career shift at this time. I've been doing more props and food styling for still TV and film. I have an art background, and I'm shifting more that way. Not that I would turn down another role. I'm just not really hustling for it at this time. So I'm kind of moving more the art direction. My art Instagram is Jen Kelsey Art. If you want to go there, there's my plug.
Well, we're happy to, hopefully some folks will go check that out. Well, thanks to all of you for being here today. So let's take a step back and talk about the movie itself. I think let's start at a high level. Mike or Jesse, if one of you wants to offer, or I don't know, maybe you guys have a routine on this. Tell us a little about what the plot of the story, Own Worst Enemy.
Own Worst Enemy is about a kind of failing inventor. And he's finally he's kind of obsessed with this other inventor who takes credit takes credit for all of his ideas. And all his ideas are kind of sharper image, goofy ideas like the Dentomatic, something for your teeth. And meanwhile, he has invented a time machine just to go back and get credit for his other inventions. And when he does finally invent it successfully, he doesn't even appreciate that he invented a time machine. And so he goes back in time and he keeps kind of making things worse. And meanwhile, the role that Jen plays, Layla discovers the time machine, and he's been making her miserable for 7 years because he's so fixated on this vengeance to this other guy. So she finds the time machine and she goes back in time to stop herself from falling in love with him. And then, hijinks ensue.
And in the meantime, kind of re-falls in love with the younger version of him.
And realizes there's no hope. Sorry.
Well, they say they write what you know, guys, but I can't imagine that this is a story you guys are drawing from your own experience.
Well, the story comes from originally your writing partner, right? Dan and you came up with this idea.
Yeah, I mean, the original idea, the story got started, I think, back in 2005. It had been brewing for a while. My writing partner, college roommate, and good friend Dan Peretti and I were throwing back and forth ideas. And then one of the initial ideas that stuck was the idea of this guy who invents a time machine, and instead of using it to, do something good for the world, stop some tragedy or something, or even for any decent personal gain, just uses it out of spite, just to get revenge on an enemy. And we thought there was some humor in that. So we went back and forth via email with the synopsis, and it grew and grew, and then we started writing the script. And then the script, we finished a version of it. It sat on a shelf for quite a while. And then there's actually a contest at my university for they do a short film competition every year. So I said, yeah, maybe that would make a decent short if I could distill it down to 20 pages. And so got it out, got the script out, edited it down, and that kind of got it going again with that story, just kind of taking our concept, which maybe we didn't.
Yeah, I mean, that's all true. But what I think happened is we started talking about, and then what started happening is we talked about, I'm a writer too. I've written with Mike. He writes with Dan. I have a writing partner. And we had a lot of scripts, and which one we could make for the smallest amount of money. And I always loved the idea of this script and came back to it. I was like, that idea of using a time machine, we love time travel movies, using a time machine just to, deal with your bitterness, and your anger and your rage at some person who doesn't maybe even know you exist. I found that really intriguing. And so then we started developing it to do a low budget movie.
This might be a good time to acknowledge that none of you were technically below the line crew on this movie. Mike and Jesse, you're producing and co-directing, and Jen, you're the lead actress. But that line is a little blurry on an independent production. Let's talk a little bit about low budget filmmaking in general, and specifically how that affected Own Worst Enemy.
Yeah, we kind of had built up over the years a sort of small film collective in a sense. One of our friends back in, I guess, 2004, 2005, who was a writer, wanted to make his own indie movie. And we said we'd help out. So I actually DP'd it. Jesse produced it. We shot it, it was a micro budget film. And the lead actor in that, this guy, Chris Cashman, kind of saw what we were doing and became inspired and said, well, I want to make my own movie. And along with his friend, Darren Leiss, who was our DP on Own Worst Enemy. So Darren had come to our set, and those guys kind of said, well, man, this is doable. We can do our thing. And so it led to a film called Carts, about a group of shopping cart attendants at a Costco that Chris wrote and directed, and Darren DP'd. Mm-hmm. And then he brought us aboard to produce. And so that kind of collective kind of kept spilling over.
And the thing about, I think with low budget film, that's really important, because you talked about above the line and below the line, is that, you need to have a group of core people who are really passionate about making indie film and passionate about your project, because they're going to have to do like 3 or 4 of the crew jobs. I mean, you're not going to get through an indie film and say, oh, I was just the producer or the director. You'll at some point have driven a truck, you'll have catered, you'll have done a location scout, you'll have made a prop, you'll have put makeup on somebody, you brought your own costumes. So, I mean, maybe Jen can probably speak to what it is to be an actor in this situation, and how your role is different, in indie film than in a bigger film.
Well, Own Worst Enemy was a unique experience in that for being a smaller budget film, it was so professional and seemingly organized, and the quality was really good. A knowledgeable and dedicated crew, like you said, and you were able to come up with great equipment as well. So that makes a huge difference in production value. But this was probably the best in terms of that And everyone got to have their dream position in a way. It's like, what do you want to do in a film? That's you. Okay, you got it. You're props. You're the producer. You're the director. Like, it was fantastic. Being teamwork oriented myself already, I really enjoyed working on this. I could be the actress, but then, it was hard. I wanted to restrain myself from overstepping my bounds too much. Is like, oh, we should have this prop, or, I've got costumes, I can contribute here. It was all welcome, but I really like that environment of being able to
And your dog was
be
in
all
it.
in. And my dog was in it, yeah. I assisted casting in that way too, and was the animal handler.
Jen, you're also the animal handler
Yes.
throughout the film. So what other hats did you guys have to wear, thinking of this blurring between above the line and below the line roles?
Well, the first couple, there's another couple involved, Darren Lice and Crystal Rowe, who we got involved early on. And again, they came from the film Carts. Darren was our DP. Crystal was a producer on this. And they're the first two we got involved and said, here's what we'd like to do. We'd like to get you guys involved. They were on board.
And Crystal did a lot of the digital like work on props, like magazines and everything, like a lot of the graphic design in general, like in the marketing and everything, which was really great. But just having them as passionate, it allowed us to have, a really professional office to do casting. So it's not at your house. We were able to get props from them through their work a little bit, right? Or did I just make that up? So hard to remember every little detail.
Yeah, it's hard to remember who brought what at this point.
Yeah. And so I think, but for hats, both on Carts and in Own Worst Enemy, you're not just the producer. I mean, a lot of times you're, filling in for the role that someone couldn't make that day. Like you end up being the second AD, you end up being a PA, you end up being a set dresser, you end up dealing with catering because something fell through, so there's a lot of different roles that you end up playing.
It kind of starts with casting director.
Casting
you're
director.
putting
Yeah,
out
you're definitely
notices for
casting
casting. We're holding auditions. We're not watching the videotapes that some casting directors made. We are in the room, and Darren and Crystal were with us as well.
Yeah.
Do you remember when I auditioned that I had come from a car accident?
Oh my God, that's true. I forgot about that. That's crazy.
Yeah. So as far as auditions, most of them happened at Crystal's building where she worked. But Jen, you actually came to our house because we knew you a little bit. And so you were more comfortable doing that.
And I remember on my way to your house, I was on the freeway and this lady merged right into me and we swiped cars and ran into the side of the wall, and we got out and there was no major damage. It was all cosmetic, and I just looked at it and looked at her, and this is how committed I was to you. It was like, I have an audition, I gotta go. And I called you, I said, I'm gonna be like 10 minutes late, and headed over, and maybe that improved my performance, just the nervousness, the fragility of me arriving.
I do remember that was an intense audition, and I think what sold us on you was, there's the scene Keaton brandishes a gun, and in the film he points it at you briefly. But I remember in the audition you actually took the gun and like held it up to your head or put it in your mouth or something. It got so intense. And I was just like, man, she's going for it. She has amped this thing up.
Well, we don't want to encourage aspiring actors to get themselves into car accidents before they go to auditions. But Jen, I'm glad that broke in your favor.
Yeah, it worked out.
I, as a director, with Jen, there was a lot of times when I really appreciated her attitude, because do you remember when you had to jump out of the time travel door and you were like basically naked, and we're trying to have you land safely on the ground, keep the towel or keep the blanket around you.
Mm-hmm.
It was cold. And I was just like trying to be so sensitive and get the shot. All the guys were trying to be really respectful. And I mean, do you remember, how did you feel during that scene? I mean, because I just thought you were just playing it like a champ in general.
Yeah, I try and just be confident in situations like that. Okay, this is the job, let's go. And I'm not really I don't embarrass that easily.
Yeah.
And nudity doesn't bother me that much. Sometimes sexuality I have a hard time taking seriously. Like, this is ridiculous, like being all romantic and there's 10 people staring at you. Like, this isn't real. But
Hard,
like
yeah.
the naked falling around, that's somehow natural to me.
That's normal.
And I do remember also enjoying in and out of the dumpster outside, half naked, mostly naked as well. But I see the comedy in that. So that doesn't bother me. I rather enjoy it.
I also remember with you, I think it was our last day of filming at the wine store, the wine bar, and we had a fake wine that didn't quite look the right color. And you were like, is anyone here really concerned about drinking real wine at this point? Like, just give me a glass of wine. It's like, well, I don't want to presume that you're going to drink this real wine and perform. You're like, just give me the glass of wine.
I'm so committed.
Committed.
I'll take one for the team.
Did the budget allow for a decent bottle of wine?
Well, we were in 55 degree. There's that store in Atwater, like they have a downstairs thing. Yeah, I guess we didn't really, but we took it out of our personal budget.
Well, and also it's changed hands, but the owner at the time, Andy, let us film there for free. He was, we lived in the neighborhood and he was great.
Yeah.
And so I think buying a couple bottles of wine offset some of the production costs.
I think what I always thought was kind of interesting was to watch Mike have to direct a low budget movie with me, and he's an AD. And we did have a lot of ADs help us out, but to watch him having to switch between those roles, because being an assistant director is creative, yes, but you are really trying to keep everything going. We've scheduled it. You have to stay on schedule. But sometimes you're like, come on, we got to get to the next thing. We got to get to the next thing. But when you're the director, sometimes you have to stay in the moment and not worry about the next thing. And I think that is an interesting balancing act that you had to do as an AD. I mean, I'm a writer, so it's a little different, but yeah.
Yeah, you writers have no sense of time.
Yeah, we have no sense of time. So we're a good team that way. We just fight about it later.
Well, coming in as an AD, yeah, you definitely get the perspective of, what the day holds in store. And even when I work with directors now as an AD, it's like, I know like if we take too much time on the scene earlier in the day that, I've scheduled in a way that we can make up time on the back end. So you kind of, pull from scenes that are coming up. So you have a better sense of that.
And we didn't have any time to pull from
That's true.
for later. So if you didn't do it, it was probably not going to happen. So that's a little different.
Well, to the point you guys are making, I've spoken with other ADs who have, for example, gotten their opportunity to direct an episode of the show. And pretty universally, they talk about having to set aside their AD hat and focus on the creative, what's really called for the director, that if they try to AD their own shoot, they end up missing some of the things that they want to do creatively. But I imagine that's really difficult if you're wearing both hats. And so, Mike, were you playing the role of first AD on set, or you actually had other ADs there? And it was just a matter of your sensibilities kind of going back and forth.
Yeah, it was more the sensibilities. I mean, in prep, I kind of prepped it as an AD. I before we got going, I put out a one-line schedule just to get a sense of how many days this was going to take us and how to budget it. And then on set, with many departments actually, because a lot of people were volunteering their time and wanted to help out. We had people that would come in and help us run the set. But if they couldn't make it that day, someone else would come in. And there are a few days where we had no legitimate AD on set, but for the most part, a lot of the days were contained in one location with a couple of casts. So, as long as we had the shot list, we could keep going and forge ahead.
Yeah. And we're lucky in that we have a lot of AD friends. So people who are volunteering happen to be ADs, which is helpful. I mean, everyone doesn't have that, I don't think. So that was helpful to keep everything going smoothly.
That speaks to, I think, a lot of low budget filmmaking is people don't understand the importance of that. And how much, if you put into prep, that goes a long way in your shoot days, and you can really schedule yourself into nightmare shoot days where that just aren't makeable.
Yeah. And I want to talk about Ricky Manzi and Ismail. They're both, are they producers on the movie? They had different roles, but they really got into the props. and making all these weird inventions with us and really helping us with set design. And I felt like that their contribution really was all over the place. I mean, they did almost every role possible, and they're at that time were both production assistants, right? And they're just excited to do it. And
yeah, Rick Monzi and Ismael Jimenez are now both great second ADs that were working with me on Desperate Housewives as well. And Ricky kind of forged ahead as the prop master on this, and built a lot of our funky props. Ismail was credited as production designer, and they both have associate producer credits. But he built the time travel door. He found a lot of the set dressing.
He would just show up with something. Look at this, you guys, and he's like, "I'm going to turn it into this amazing thing," and it was a lot of fun.
And also, and we can get into this in a bit, but our main kind of space we filmed was this weird storefront / speakeasy storage. Studio space, turned into a studio space, and that became Keaton's workshop in the present, and we turned it around to Keaton's workshop in the past, and then turned it around again to Nichols' workshop,
turned around to the key shop,
and the front half was the key shop, was the diner, was the Inventors Anonymous building.
It was a lot of our sets, a lot of our locations.
Well, let me take a step back. When you guys talked about the shooting, I know, Mike, you shared with me before that you guys shot for around 13 days. Was it 13 days back to back, or this was spread out over the 2 months? How did this come together just from a planning perspective?
It was, I just looked at the schedule before we got started. We did I think we started on a Tuesday. We did Tuesday through Saturday. So it was a 5 days in a row. We had a Sunday off, and then we shot Monday through Saturday, 6 days. And then had Sunday off, and then came back to finish off the last couple of days. The general scope of it was we had to get our quote unquote stage space ready. So the first couple of days were actually at our old house. And this is where, coming down to this kind of family feeling of filmmaking, we were shooting a scene in Video Villages in our living room, and our 18-month-old daughter Eva, who appears as the crying toddler in the script, was not feeling well that day. So we're holding her at Video Village, passing her back and forth, thinking the crew must think we're nuts.
She got sick, so she couldn't go to daycare, but we had everyone coming to our house, and we didn't really know that till the morning of. So the first day we had to, we were trading her back and forth, and everyone was coming together for the first time. And so that was a little intense.
She was a scene stealer.
Yeah, she was a little bit of
she was a scene stealer in that. The crying baby worked out.
She's method.
She was method for sure.
But there are things that come up in low budget filmmaking, like, because of the hours and, us having an 18-month-old, after we got a couple days in, I just called my mom up and I said, "Mom, we're flying you out here. You got to help watch Eva while we make this movie." So I got my mom on a flight, and Grandma came to the rescue to help us with our baby.
Yeah, that's true. We thought having an 18-month-old was the perfect time that we should make our feature film.
So that's a tip for young filmmakers.
Have a baby
make
and
your
then
movie.
make a movie. It's the best time.
So when you guys talked about the crew coming in, about how many folks did you have on set from a crew perspective?
We had about 8 to 10 people. Darren was our DP camera operator. We had a gentleman named Juan Garcia, who was our, dolly grip / everything else camera assistant. He worked, with Darren mostly. Tammy Eldridge was a set costumer on Desperate Housewives, and she was our costume designer on this. So she, managed to have access to some of the Desperate Housewife costume supply for us. We had a couple different script supervisors. Our initial one, Katie, who'd worked with many times, had to leave for a better paying gig, I guess. And so one of our PAs bumped up to script supervisor. And then, there was a lot of crew members that would make it when they could. So we had people that would, show up for a day or two, and, some of the other consistent ones, Gina Rylander. So Gina was Eva Longoria's makeup assistant on Desperate Housewives. She found out we were making a movie, and she said, "Oh, I'd love to do it." I'm like, "Gina, like I can't, this is so low budget. I can't really pay you much." She goes, "No, I don't want to get paid. I just want to, it'll be fun." So she came out, volunteered for us, and was great. And Lydia Fantini was someone that had been recommended. She was trying to start her career as a hairstylist, and this is one of her first film projects. And since then, she's been working nonstop. I ran into her recently, and she's been doing well. And this is one of her first projects.
That's been one of the fun parts on both of the low budget movies that we worked on during that time period. A lot of the people who were just getting started are now like really successful at the roles that they were playing on our films, which was nice.
Now, Jen, you referenced earlier the idea that things on this set, good equipment, professional crew. Other thoughts about how this might have been different from other projects, or specific memories about how it came together?
At times it seemed chaotic, but I think that's what's special about it. Yeah, I think everyone was vibing. Everyone was on a hustle. I think it was just a really special project. Special memories. I just rewatched it, and it's fun when you rewatch something that you work on. You can just remember each shooting day independently, even like, oh, I remember this day I asked for a bologna sandwich for breakfast, and I'm like, well, why would I? Oh, that sounds terrible now. But
I'm kind of curious, because it was a time travel movie, and you had read the script and everything, and we were shooting so quickly. I mean, one day you're like, the first day I think was pretty, how did you feel that first day of shooting? Because it was kind of like a very intense scene right off the bat. I think you guys were doing the older Layla goes back to seduce younger Keaton. Wasn't that the first day?
No, I think the first thing we did was Keaton comes back to apologize, and she's in bed, and he brings her the donuts. It actually didn't make the cut.
That didn't make it into. We had some lighting. There was some lighting or something. I can't remember.
I think it just didn't fit in.
Yeah, it didn't. It didn't fit in. Yeah.
So speaking of the time travel shenanigans, there are a lot of scenes in the movie where an older version of the character is interacting with a younger version of the character. I'd like to hear more about what that was like, both Jen, from your perspective, as far as acting against yourself, and also just the logistics and challenges of setting up these scenes.
Acting against myself was a first, and it was really fun. I like those scenes a lot. I just rewatched it, and those are my favorite scenes. So in that process, I think Mike was standing by, and he would read the lines like a casting director would maybe in an audition, right? So he would read the other half of my lines, and then I would then have to respond and act towards my double, the girl, I can't remember her name, Skylar. Skylar was my double.
Gina's daughter, her makeup artist's daughter.
Yeah. So then I would act to her, and then and that's interesting because you know how you're going to act or respond to yourself in one character, and then you have to imagine how you just received it. It's a bit schizophrenic. I think in those scenes I memorized and acted out both roles of the scene when I prepared for it, and then remembered to only execute the part we were filming at a time. So then I wasn't like mouthing my response or something. Does that make sense?
I can imagine that being a challenge, right? And I guess at a larger level then, so are you, this is, I guess, suppose a question of whether you have more of a delay redoing someone's makeup to be in the other role, or whether you're shooting different locations or trying to run all of someone's scenes in one version of their makeup before going back and forth. What really took priority from a planning perspective?
Typically what we would do is start with one version's coverage, their like close up and the over the shoulder of a double to their close up, and then fall back to our kind of split screen 50-50 shot and clean up that look, and then keep the camera locked off, and they'd go change into the different costume, come back, we'd complete the 50-50 split screen, and then turn around onto that new looks coverage over the photo double. So that's kind of how we did it. And Jen, her character, I think we had more planned in initial scripts, and just for budgetary reasons, we ended up, it got trimmed out of the.
Well, a lot of Jen's scenes in the original script were a lot bigger, like more like these comedic big scenes, and we just financially could not pull them off the way that we wanted to. So you did lose a few scenes, unfortunately, because of, or they were toned down a little bit just for the nature of the beast that was the shoot. And then when we did, we had several doubles in the finale scene. I don't want to get into it too much, but we had the two inventors. So we had John Maddie was the actor, and we had Mike Lutz. And so they were acting against their younger selves, but in a room all together. And that sequence to me was one of the most intense because one, we had to write it in the first place. Like that was a finale scene that took a while to figure out when I finally started writing with Dan and Mike near the end. And once we got it figured out, then just in the middle of all of this, getting this production going, we come to this scene and it's like, you have to do the shot list, and make sure it's perfect. Because if you don't, a day like that is going to be pretty horrific for everybody. And I think even though it's still our longest day, it was really great I was really glad I was working with an AD director and also Val was there, who's also a very good at organizing. And the actors were so great. And you too, Jen, just acting against yourself, coming really prepared, being really believable in those moments. I actually think all three of the actors who had to act against themselves brought a whole lot to the production value, just with their insights and the way that they played it. And so I was ultimately, we rewatched the film too, and I was really proud of the double scenes in general. I thought that they came off really well, and I think it was a credit to the actors, a big part of it, and just the planning too. So.
Yeah, it's hard with those, especially for the audience, to keep people separated and who's who.
Yeah.
So we took a lot of care with both the Tammy and the cast with
Tammy
clothes
and
selection.
Gina,
The older, more bitter Keaton wears a lot of grays and blues. His scenes were lit differently. It's a colder, bluer look, whereas the younger, more idealistic Keaton wears more reds and like more earthy tones, warmer stuff. The lighting's much warmer. And then as the film goes on and those two worlds kind of come together, some of those things, some of those elements start to come together as well. And even in the camera work, the older Keaton is more handheld, whereas the other one is more on dolly or tripod. And as so the different looks for both costumes, hair, makeup, and lighting for those different characters. It's also something we'd done before. So we had done a music video a few years before that. We had characters acting against themselves with photo doubles. So it's something we'd kind of pulled off at a smaller scale before. So we were a little bit used to the process. And even we did a little spec commercial where we did a little split screen doubling work. So I guess it's something that
I may have done one in college too. Maybe we're obsessed with having people play against each other.
It's also a way to have like a really full cast with only a handful of actors.
Now, I know that a lot of Jen's work and Jen, some of the work against yourself, like you had to get into a wig and very different costuming and just a completely different look. So what's the turnaround on something like that? Like that's a long time for the crew at an indie film to be sitting around.
I think they really made it work. I feel like we made those switches in maybe 30 minutes. Maybe my memory is off, but we didn't really have the time or the luxury. They might schedule another scene in between if we were lucky, I think. But they would sort of plan the makeup just so that transfer would be easier, like, oh, just a little heavier eye here and throw the wig on and let's go. It was fast. It was guerrilla style changing. Just Quick. I don't need a dressing room. Let's go.
Well, that's probably a good lead in to go back to the issue of low budget filmmaking in general, to be able to get the kind of production value that you're looking for. What other sort of secrets or tricks did you have to use to help bring this together?
I mean, with low budget, one of the most important things, if I'm going to give advice to anyone about low budget filmmaking, is to make sure that you have a core group of people that are going to do the main roles in the crew that, you know, that are very passionate about the project. Also, like when you're interviewing people, because we do, you know, you post these jobs and you interview for your crew. And if you have an interview with someone and you're like, oh, the price is right, but there's something about them that is reading wrong to you. You know, you don't want to make the mistake of choosing to save the money over hiring someone that is going to be toxic in one way or another. Because like at a normal job, that will, you know, they're going to be there for a little time and it'll spread itself out. But in 13 days, you have one person on set who isn't doing their job or is complaining all the time or is not willing to step out of their comfort zone. It's going to be really detrimental to your experience, you know, and I've seen it happen. And so I do think one of the most important things is listen to your gut in those interviews, listen to your gut when you're casting. That's not a time to save money, you know, just because you can't find the person who is the right per hour rate. You don't want to go with someone who's not gonna, I mean, it's better not to have a person almost, if that makes sense. That's one thing we learned, both not the easy way, but not on this film. So, and then, I don't know, that's one of my pieces of advice, just in the initial beginning. And I think being very prepared, take as long as you can on the script, because it doesn't cost you any money to fix it while you're writing. And, you know, you learn that lesson every time you make a project, because when you rewatch your project, if you're a writer and a director, there's always something where you're like, oh, you know, it doesn't matter what project it is. There's always something that you would have liked to do different, but you can save a lot of money in writing. You know, pre-production saves you a lot of money in production. So that's where we would look for ways to save money, is the script. And it's important to do that first and not try to figure it out day 7 while you're there.
The other thing is we're very DIY, kind of hands-on. I mean, we edited in our breakfast nook the film, but you have to kind of know your limitations and know when to reach out. You know, yeah. We found a recommendation for our post sound mixer, Ray, who did a wonderful job. Just not only just mixing what we had, but also bringing other elements of, you know, footsteps and eerie sounds and the sounds of the door and all this. And then also we had a professional colorist do the color timing, which was a recommendation from someone I knew. And that just really just adds so much more. It's something, those are the type of things that some people are good at and can do on their home computer or whatever, but it just was kind of outside of our reach. And so we reached out for help on those.
Yeah. And then with music, Julia Holter did the score, and it was her first score, but she's a professional electronica kind of her music's kind of avant-garde. I don't know, but she's pretty, you can check her out. And I think she's now composing some projects. I think she did a Martin Scorsese project, and she was working with me at the time. And, you know, I talked to her about doing it, and she was like, yeah. And I think that her music brought a lot to it. And so, yeah, if we spent a little extra on getting some music that was real quality, you know, instead of trying to do that ourselves, because that would have been bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe you could have done it. No.
Speaking of crew and cast, what sort of union agreements did you have in place?
We did do a SAG low budget agreement. I'm not sure what they called it at the time or still call it, but I mean, pretty much every actor in the town is a part of the Screen Actors Guild, unless they're fresh off the bus from Iowa or something. And we were working with a lot of the cast were our friends or folks that we'd worked with in the past. Carl Ramsey, Laura Mancini, you know, so, and Mike Lutz was a friend of ours. So it would have been, you know, there's a lot of initial work that goes into setting up, being a signatory of of Screen Actors Guild, but it would have been much more frustrating to try to do a non-union SAG casting session. We'd have probably gone nuts trying to do it. So
Yeah.
And what about on the DGA side? I know since then, in more recent times, I've heard stories of there being extremely low budget DGA deals similar to what SAG has been doing for years and years. But I don't recall that they were fully in place that long ago, but you would know better.
I think we researched that a lot, and part of the problem is we're directing partners, and wasn't that part of the problem?
Yeah, the DGA is not real fond of the directing duo, and just looking forward in my own career, working on TV and wanting to direct episodes of that, it was going to create more problems looking ahead than I felt it was worth. Cut to a letter comes to my inbox from the guild.
Well, I know that even on that front, I think there's been some changes in the direction that what the guild tolerates as far as that, because I am seeing a lot more of those joint credits, both on movies and even occasionally on TV as well. So it's interesting to see how all the unions are sort of adapting to this new environment where it's much easier, particularly, I think, even since you've done your film, for folks to do independent productions. But part of that is the equipment getting much cheaper. And I think that you guys were faced with rather expensive equipment back in 2012 for pulling something like this together.
Yeah, I mean, we shot, this was a DSLR, this was Darren had I think a Canon 5D, and he had a camera package. I asked him to put together a list of grip equipment, lighting equipment that he wanted, and took it to the best boys that I was working with at the time in the grip electric world. And surprisingly, like our electrician department, they took the list, and I was expecting maybe to get a few things off of it, and they gave me the entire package. And I picked it up. This was after our show had wrapped. So, and as I was leaving the lot in the pickup truck, the security guard stopped me and said, "Where are you going with this equipment?" And I was like, I had no answer for him. And I took a moment, and he goes, "Are you making returns?" And I was like, "Yes, I'm making returns. I'm returning this gear," which I'm clearly leaving the lot, and it's all labeled with the lot logo on it. So then I get really nervous and called one of the electricians, and she said, "Don't worry about it. You're a filmmaking brother. You're fine. We know the people at the loading dock, and it's easier to beg forgiveness, and just go make your movie." So we made the movie, and then the equipment sat in my garage until we started the season back up, and I sent had a stake bed come pick it up to get back on the lot. So no more questions from the security guards.
I hope you don't anger them for telling them that story.
They tell stories of Spielberg sneaking on the lot
That's
from the
true.
tram,
That's true.
and no one's asking him to pay back his tram fee or anything. So
Well, let's talk about some more about the commitment you had from the various actors to the project. Again, you've talked about the challenges. It's obviously can be a difficult environment working at the low budget at that pace, not all of the regular crew, but you have a lot of folks that are equally as committed, and it shows up on the screen as far as the work they're doing.
Well, and I'll say that most of the cast that we worked with, we knew, we'd worked with in the past, or we knew personally, except for John Maddy, who was our lead, who played James Keaton. We'd put out an ad, a casting call for that, and had a bunch of people read. And Jess, do you remember any of that process?
Oh, I remember that. Yes. Yeah. I mean, we had a lot of really great people read for the part. There was just something about John, just his demeanor, his attitude, that just made me think right away that he was the right choice for that role. Not only did I like his performance, or his audition, I liked just the way he was, as a person, and it ended up being the right choice, because when you're doing a 13-day shoot, you want to make sure you have an actors who are willing to really get into the role and not just kind of, it's hard to act against yourself. And especially with John and Jen, their hours were a lot, longer. They had to do a lot of performance back and forth. And I think it was a lot to ask, and I think they did a great job, both of them. And I thought the other actors did a great job as well. But
and there wasn't much rehearsal time.
Yeah,
Jen, do you want to talk? I remember calling both of you
yeah.
the day before we started and saying, I apologize, we didn't really have much, if any, rehearsal, and let me know if there's any questions. But we start filming tomorrow.
Yeah, we did end up getting together, and we went through the whole script, and we rehearsed that climax scene, that really like heightened confrontational scene at the end, together. But yeah, we just sunk our teeth in and did our best, really. You just sort of like get into that energy and that flow of like, okay, here we go. And then, we just had to trust our instincts, I think, a lot of the time. Because it was like, all right, we got this in 2 takes. Let's go. So you just try and give what you can. And hopefully they like it.
Yeah. And with the actors who we worked with on this, on the show, I appreciated the times when they, you were talking, Jen, about having to hold back sometimes when you wanted to jump into another job. I appreciated when they held back, but there was times when you guys gave notes and gave advice that were actually very thoughtful and brought a lot to the scene. And I liked that, we had those kind of people that you could have that relationship with and have a creative discussion with on the set and make things better, And I can think of a couple moments like that. I remember, just things were going too fast or the pacing or, it was great to be able to have those kind of dialogues with you guys. So.
Now I want to talk about one of the smaller roles in the film. Jesse, you play a woman who's in her house and interrupted by a time traveler coming through. What exactly is going on there?
Well, I'm not an actress, and I was so tired, and I was going to do a cameo. And so my idea was to put green face, like a green mask on my face and be like I was, in my spa mode. And then I would get interrupted that way. I do drop the only F-bomb in the movie, which I'm sure my children will like when they watch it at one point. I enjoyed it. I was really nervous, to be honest. I'm not usually, the last time I was in front of the camera, I guess we did a few little things, but it was like someone's student film in college. So it was a little bit intimidating, but I watched it and it cracks me up pretty much every time.
Yeah,
I love that scene.
Did you guys? Any disagreement in the casting room about which of you was going to play that part? Mike, you could have done that as well, I think, with the green makeup.
Well, yeah, I have a little non-speaking role, but it's also funny to see. I think everyone on the crew is works background in it at one point. I think several people you can see in different roles, or I think like Rick Monzi is both outside and inside the diner facing different directions. So stuff like that. I mean, it was, anyone passing by in the street got pulled into acting in this as in background or small parts.
Yeah. My best friend from high school is the homeless man, which I enjoy watching every single time too. No, we didn't argue about that one. He was all about me doing that scene in the bathroom.
The thing we didn't argue about, but we had trouble figuring out where to place that scene. There was a few location things like that. We filmed at our house. We filmed at a couple other friends' houses or apartments, and we had the studio space, which serviced a bunch of the scripts. But there were also times we started production without having a bookshop location, which was kind of a central location.
And that was Dark Delicacies. They were really great. They just let us shoot there. And a lot of wonderful things happened around that location, because then Ishmael just happened to have a friend who lived down the street, so we could do base camp down there. And the owners of that shop are wonderful and really open to independent creators in general, not just of comics and books, but, the film and everything.
Yeah. And so sometimes it with projects like this, you just have to get lucky, because we finally found a location with a reasonable cost attached. And, but it was out in Burbank. We didn't know anyone out there. And we asked around, does anybody know anyone that lives around this that we can just pull up and have lunch and get people ready? And Ismail goes, yeah, my friend lives there. And the kid literally lived right outside the back door of this bookshop, which was crazy. And, we ended up filming in the guy's house as well, and saved us a location move later on. So just happy accidents that happened along the way.
So since Own Worst Enemy, to what degree have any of you been involved in additional low budget productions?
Right after that wrapped, I helped out Darren, our DP, shot a little pilot, or like a web pilot. So again, paying it forward with our little film community, helped him out there. And we've just been kind of writing in the time since. We're actually, now that our girls are a little bit older and they're interested in creating and filmmaking, we're planning a little small film with them as cast and co-producers.
We're shooting a film over the Thanksgiving break. We'll see how it comes out. And then we are prepping to do a TV pilot, more in like the kind of Black Mirror vein. So I've written a couple short stories that I'm going to turn into scripts, and we're going to do those. One of them for sure.
Jen, how about you?
I've worked on a couple independents, again, like a few web pilots as well, or web series even. But yeah, this was by far the most professional all around, I think. Like, they really knocked it out for their resources. Absolutely.
And how do you guys feel between 2012 and now? What may have changed in low budget filmmaking, or what principles are exactly the same?
Well, I think, there's a lot of access to being able to make these things this wasn't even a low budget. This was, micro budget. Now there's, just the cell phone videos, people are making feature films on iPhones and stuff like that. So just the access to gear that allows you to do this is a little bit easier. There's also a lot more streaming platforms that allow you to get it out to the masses, which just in the last few years has increased quite a bit. And one of the other things, and this is about filmmaking and in any creative endeavor, it takes so much effort to write it, takes so much effort to produce it, but then you're not done once you've produced it. I mean, you have to be the champion of your work. No one is going to, there's so many things to watch and consume out there. You really have to, you have to push it out there. You have to get the word out. There's so much publicity and social media and everything. And no one's going to do that for you. There's so much work after the thing is filmed, after it's produced, that, there's just as much work after the fact, if not before, of just, getting it out to the world and having people see what you've done.
Not to discourage anyone, but I'm pretty confident that there's a high percentage of independent films that stay in the camera and never get edited. And, so there is this long post-production, then marketing, then film festivals, just to get people to see it, and actually view the film. So it is important to keep that in mind. Pace yourself.
So do you have any interest in doing a reboot 7 years later, a time travel update?
Where are they now?
Yeah,
they're supposed to be happy, right? Oh, I'm sorry, Jen.
Right. Oh, yeah. There are scenes where I'm like, oh, I wish I could redo that, or I would play that so different now, just with different life experiences. And so that's always interesting. I don't know if you feel that way.
It is hard to look back at your work and after some time has passed and see what you would have done differently. But, you got to be proud of it and forge ahead.
That's the whole thing about being a writer or director or an actor. That's the interesting thing about film, is that you put it on the screen and it's there forever. With writing, it's like you have to choose to stop, because you could just keep writing it again and again. And when I watch it, I rewrite it every time, but you can't do it. It would be interesting to see it with a bigger budget, but I wouldn't change this particular film.
Yeah. The one thing I would say, in regards to that of not knowing when to stop writing is, yeah, obviously this film and most low budget films and a lot of big budget films could, would benefit from more time with the script, more time in prep. But there is also something to be said about just doing it, just getting it done. Don't think twice, just jump in, get it done, and then have something to show for it. Because we've had a few projects ourselves that we've talked to death where we don't even, they don't even get off the ground because we've overthought them too much. And, if you just plunge ahead, do it, you'll be recording a podcast with Skid one day.
I guess, and on the other side of that, because I worked in development a long time, is you can develop the soul out of a script, the heart and soul out of it. And I remember watching lots of projects where I'd come out of a meeting and I go, this is the script that should get made. This is the script that's not going to get made because they all just came up with a bunch of notes and it's going to be rewritten 8 more times. And it's not going to be what made it. It's not going to be the script that people bought and the reason that they bought it. It's going to be this watered down version of it. So you can overwrite things and overthink things. So I agree with that. Just do it.
Well, it's clear that you guys are happy not only with the effort and the team that came together with the project, but with the final product. And I think it's worth for folks to check out. I will posit, however, that you could very easily write a sequel where folks go back in time to the original movie and you can reshoot those scenes. It worked for the Terminator franchise, and I think there's no reason, if you get a whole bunch of new views after the podcast comes out, that you guys shouldn't start plotting that sequel. And we'll talk about it here on Below the Line when it comes together.
Great.
Sounds good.
Thanks, guys, for joining me today. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Skid.
Bye.
Hope you enjoyed the episode. If so inclined, please take a moment and give us 5 stars and a comment on iTunes. Fan of the show? Check out our Facebook page at Podcast Below the Line. For Twitter and Instagram, you can find us at Pod Below the Line. And if you've got feedback, send email to skid, S-K-I-D, at belowtheline1word.biz. That's B-I-Z. Thanks to Curtis Five for our music, and thanks to John Wan for the logo. You can get the logo on t-shirts, mugs, and stickers. Just go to redbubble.com and search for Below the Line. Next episode, we're talking about the long-running TV series 24, and all of my guests were crew for all of the original 8 seasons. They got a ton of fun stories. Join us again in 2 weeks.
Well, the first people we got involved.
Shoot, Mike.
Yeah.
Sorry. I think I'm coughing on you, but then I think, I don't know, it was coughing or chair moving on the last thing that I said. So maybe I'll say that again and we'll get to it.
Okay.
If that's okay. Oh, that was that. I didn't see because I was reading. Was that you, Mike? Did you cough?
I'm not going to fess up to anything.
I know exactly what happened.
We're not recording video, so there's no.
We already went back in time and fixed it. It's not even a thing anymore.
Okay, let me try it again.